I'm Sonny Liston, I'm Jack Dempsey, there's no one like me. I'm from Nairclaw. There's no one that can match me. My style is impetuous, my defense is impregnable. And I'm just ferocious, I want your heart, I want to eat his children. I was going to rip his heart out, I'm the best ever.
All right, we are back to recap the war of last night.
USA, USA, USA.
Yeah, before the fight, I kind of switched my allegiance to maybe wanting Spence to win just because he's an American. But
right.
Then throughout the fight, I started feeling a little bad for Brook because he was just taking so much of an onslaught, so much of a beating.
Right, so let's pick up right from there. Obviously, Errol Spence gets the stoppage, right? 11th round?
11th round. Kell Brook takes a knee.
A knee.
No punches. No punches, no nothing. He couldn't see.
Reminiscent of Miguel Cotto versus Antonio Margarito.
Yes.
Very reminiscent of that. But I think all the gloves came out good for this fight. All the wraps.
Yes.
But so let's pick up right from there. Were you scoring the fight as you were watching it live, or how did you gauge it in terms of competitiveness and in terms of the scoring?
I wasn't scoring the fight, but just watching it, it had the feel of Spence being up at least a couple rounds.
Right.
I know Steve Farhood, he had it closer than I think. There's a point.
He had Brook up 4-2 after 6 rounds, but
yeah,
I gave Spence a lot
generous.
of those.
Yeah. I think that was a little generous.
Yeah, I thought that was a little bit.
But all the
weird.
judges had Spence up at the time that the fight was stopped.
Well, yeah, obviously with the knockdown in the 10th round.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a close fight, but it ended up having Spence up. And what you really saw was in the second half of the fight, he really turned it on and turned the pressure on. And what gave him the edge to me early in the fight was that excellent jab, man. It was just landing crisp every time on Kell Brook. And then, when they got up close, it looked like Brook wanted to hold more, and I thought Errol Spence did a real good job of getting out of the clinch and using his free hand to work to Brook's body. And anytime you do that early, it pays off later on in the fight. But yeah, I don't know. It just seemed like Errol Spence had I don't know. They were both in the pocket. They both stood there. They both stayed true to their word. They used some movement to back up, but they never got out of that mid-range area where they were running away from contact. But yeah, I just felt that even though they were around in the same space, I felt like Spence had better footing underneath them, and he was able to get his shots off a little bit, a lot better actually to me than what Brook was, because I saw Brook. He would land some punches, he would land some straights and hooks, and he landed a couple of uppercuts. But what I saw is he would overshoot Spence, and he would end up on top of his head. So when Brook, you just don't estimate the range right.
As a result of this war he was just in, he has a broken left eye socket, so he's gonna need surgery for that. So he's gonna have basically titanium glasses.
He will be the Terminator.
He fought the real Terminator, so he won't be the actual Terminator. He'll be more like I don't know. Not the Terminator, though. The real Terminator we saw yesterday.
Right.
And it just kind of sucks when I was watching. The reason I kind of started rooting a little bit for Brook again is because I'm like, this guy fought Triple G, who nobody wanted to fight. Shortened his career because of that. And then he's in there against another guy who, again, no one wants to fight, and he's just taking this punishment, and it kind of sucks because he's coming away with 2 L's and 2 broken eye sockets, and I would think his career is in jeopardy. I don't. If I'm him, I'm really giving a hard, thought about coming back and fighting. I know he's probably made a lot of money the last 2 fights.
Should he retire?
I don't think he should, because other than Errol Spence, I don't think anyone at welterweight can do, and this is all predicated, of course, on him being able to make 147. I don't think anybody else at welterweight can do what Errol Spence did to him, which is physically neutralize his ability to jab and control the momentum of a fight.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm on the fence on whether he should retire. I mean, I think skill wise and tool wise, he didn't look like a shot guy out there. His movements, his the way he was letting his hands go, and his temperament in the fight was certainly of that of a guy who's still very game and still on top of his game for the most part. But you just worry about the physical aspect of it, the wear and tear of it. As a result, he,
But
like you
here's the
mentioned,
thing:
he
watching
faced
the fight, like, I mean, just like his effort against Triple G. I mean, on most nights that beats most guys, that's not going to beat Triple G. Yesterday's war, I mean, he just took so much punishment and dealt out a lot of punishment, but he's not going to be fighting Errol Spence all the time. Most guys can't hang up to that kind of war. Like, I'm watching that fight now. I was even thinking, I'm like, man, like Keith Thurman, this is a bad fight against both of these guys. I mean, both of those guys are just big physical guys. It's just Brook just happened to be in there with Spence, who's I don't think Spence was bigger. Just in the shoulders, Brook looked a lot bigger.
Yeah,
but
Brook did look huge.
But Spence is definitely stronger and more physical, and he had a better game plan. He stuck to his game plan more, and I think really, other than the fact that he just got broken down, right? Because that's the obvious. How did he lose? It was just attrition. He broke down. But Brook's problem, and this picked up from like the third or fourth round, his corner was talking about this. The problem was the overarching game plan of how he was planning to win the fight. And their game plan, from what I can gather, was, yeah, I mean, you can see the trading and the, jabbing over the top and all the technical stuff. But their global game plan was that Errol Spence has never been that deep in a fight, and eventually he would break down. So they were kind of banking on Spence slowing down. And I don't think that's a good game plan because you saw that early too. And when we were texting back and forth in the fight, and I told you, like, I don't know if Brook is, because it was in the third or fourth round, early on when this happened. I was like, I don't know if Brook is already being broken down or if
he's just waiting him out.
Yeah, because he was just taking, like, and all credit to Spence, because Spence he fought a hell of a fight, but there was just some spots where Brook was just taking punishment that he should not have been taking. It's kind of like, you better hope that he wears down, because this is punishment that just it shows itself later in the fight, and it did. So I thought
what did you think he needed to do? Because I thought he was trying to hold Spence to nullify him, but he just wasn't able to do it. I thought he needed
to do what he did, like in the first round and a little
earn
bit of
some
the second round.
respect.
He earned some respect,
like what he did versus Triple G.
Early on in the fight, he was well, that's the other thing too. Early on in the fight, he was jabbing more, and he was like sitting down on his punches. And I think they should have pivoted earlier. I mean, I think it was too late when they realized it, but they should have realized that Spence is not a guy that you can wait to wear down. Spence is a guy that you have to slow down, because like Triple G, like there's no. He's supremely conditioned. He's a Terminator. He's a fucking robot. Like, waiting for him to wear down is just dumb. So,
right. So the game plan was to take Spence into deep waters, but really, when we got to deep waters in the ninth round,
I think about that game plan though. A guy who, Spence is what, his 28, 29?
It's 27.
27. So he's not the youngest of guys, but so he's in his late 20s.
But he had never been in that stage before.
That's it's a flawed game plan just out the gate. It's just a bad game plan, because even if he's never been there, he's not going to tire out, because he hasn't been in the wars that would tire you out.
Right. And we saw Brook. I think the ninth round, like I was saying, that was the round where it was like, okay, the end is near. I mean, he started to break down, and Spence, it seems like Spence just upped the pressure on him,
Yeah.
He just stayed even closer to him. He was ripping combinations. And Brook, I thought throughout the fight, he was able to, even though he was holding and Spence was still able to do some work on the inside, Brook was still strong on his legs and still moving around pretty good, and not allowing Spence to follow up. But at that point, it just felt like he was on the ropes a little bit longer, He was in the pocket in the center of the ring a little bit longer in Spence's range, and that's where Spence was able to get that extra work in. And then we saw in the 10th round where that was it. That was the breaking part. He jumped all over him. He didn't give him any breathing space. And I don't know if it was. I know Brook was probably hurt a little bit. I don't know if it was a single shot.
No, it was just an accumulation.
It was just that if Spence was just overwhelming them, and he needed to take a break from it.
See, that's the thing too. Like even in that 10th round, when he goes down, he comes back and shows the heart of a fucking champion, right? Because he comes back in the last minute of the fight, and last minute of the round, and he might not have won that last minute, but you saw him just saying, giving everything he possibly could. He just didn't have anything. But even in those spots, and then the round before where it looked like he was ready to go, he was still landing some shots where it had me thinking like, well, if the game plan was a little different, if the game plan was, hey, let's put some hurting on him instead of trying to wear him down and let him punch himself out, that earlier in the fight, these shots, because for as great as Spence was yesterday, I mean, he was there to be hit in some places. He took a lot of shots.
Yeah,
his defense was great, but Brook is a great fighter. He was there to be. He got his licks in. It's just there weren't enough of them because this game plan was just. I didn't understand it. I don't understand.
And you didn't understand the game plan versus Triple G either. And what it really speaks to is that.
Well, see, no, I understand more against Triple G because against Triple G, you're coming up 2 weight classes, so. Just the idea of going 12 rounds with a guy that size is kind of stupid just because, it ended up that way anyway, but that's a guaranteed way to take some years off your career because with Triple G style. So against Triple G, it does make sense to go for the home run because you're up in there against Randy Johnson in his prime. You're only going to get 3 swings, try to hit a home run basically. He needed to apply that same game plan against Errol Spence. My guess is they thought that since he's actually fighting a welterweight, it wouldn't be as much damage as possible, but they just didn't realize they were fighting the middleweight Triple G.
Yeah,
and then
so
it was just a flawed game plan. That's my takeaway from it.
Yeah, and it was what you mentioned in the 10th round, the heart that Brook showed. To me, it was like I have to give credit to the fans because it's like the fans. Because initially, when Brook tried to answer back a little bit, there wasn't really anything, right?
Yeah,
but it seemed like the fans just fucking came alive, man, and they literally in that 10th round willed Brook. Now I don't want to give him too much credit, but it almost seemed like they brought him back to life, man, and he kind of snapped out of it and realized, this is in front of my hometown. I can't go out like this. I gotta make my final stand. And although he didn't land a lot, I thought he landed like 2 or 3 really good power shots on Spence.
Yeah,
which I don't think they affected Spence too much because Spence had put in all that work earlier in the fight to the body to where maybe Brook had nothing left at the end there. But it brought the crowd alive, and it gave Brook a sense of pride to keep fighting on. So the UK fans, they definitely deserve a lot of credit because this, again, like the Joshua Klitschko and all their other fights, this was just like another terrific atmosphere. And just overall, man, it was compelling. It was great TV. But in terms of Brook, right? After the fight, now it's confirmed he does have the broken eye socket. But other things that we should take note is that he's had other issues. I mean, he was involved in like a major stabbing incident, after he won his first world title against Porter. I think at one point they were trying to make the Diego Chavez fight one of his defenses, and he sustained a broken rib or a rib injury. And then, the Triple G fight, obviously got the orbital bone was broken. And, so with all that said and the type of fights he took, I don't know, man. I don't think he'll be back. He'll be gone for at least a year or more. And then in that year span, will he be training? We know he's a big guy. Is he going to be able to take off all that weight? Because he says that he's going to come back to 147. He said that after the fight. Maybe that was just his ego getting the best of him. where he didn't want to seem like he was getting kicked out of the division.
Yeah.
But and he's 31, so he'd probably be about 32. I mean, the only reason I would think he should come back at this point, if to welterweight, is to probably fight Amir Khan. You know, I still think even with being broken down like he was, I still think that's a fight that he could still win, and it's another. It's another big event.
Yeah. Well, that fight won't happen because he would knock Amir Khan out. He just would. He's just too big of a guy for Amir Khan. Yeah, he's going to have some questions to answer because honestly, that's the only fight. Because I think he could come back, fight other welterweights, and beat. He fought Sean Porter. Sean Porter just as physical as Errol Spence, but not as strong as Errol Spence. It doesn't hit as hard as Errol Spence. So the damage, so he, again, like Errol Spence is a guy who took away his ability to control the momentum of a fight and the space and the timing and everything. So he could come back and fight guys not named Errol Spence, because I don't think other welterweights have the physicality of Spence to really get him completely out of his game like he has been against Triple G and Spence. But I mean, you have two orbital bone fractures. It's like, you really. That's why I think maybe the Khan fight is the only thing that would bring him back, because that would be a lot of money.
And you're really pushing it too, because say he can't get back down to 147, that means he has to go a division up to 154 with naturally bigger guys. I'm not even going to look at the list of guys who have great power or anything, but those are bigger guys, stronger guys, and all it takes is one punch, and he could be in the same predicament again. So Kell Brook has a lot to think about, man. He has a ton to think about. And then just back to Errol Spence before we wrap up all this talk about this fight, and I have a few questions. Credit to Errol Spence, because he was the 4th U.S. Olympian to win his first world title outside of the United States. Now, how big is that?
I mean, all the credit to Errol Spence. He goes on the road, goes in the guy's hometown. He was as cool as you could be. I mean, nothing seemed to faze him.
Oh, man.
He enjoyed the moment. He barely celebrated after the fight, which is, just speaks to his persona. He's just literally a freaking Terminator.
Right, and it's interesting that you would bring that up, because that's the one thing I took away from after the fight. It's his reaction after the fight. It says a lot. A lot of guys, they might be going crazy or really excited or being boastful and pounding their chest and screaming all around the ring, a la Jamal Charlo.
Yeah.
and maybe blowing off their opponents. But Spence just gives you that impression that he wasn't surprised by this. He knew all along this is what would happen, and he just came in and he handled business. And another thing it speaks to, which goes along the same lines, is his composure, man, and his confidence. You're really elite, you're really great when you can compare this to basketball. We could talk about LeBron James or someone like that. When you can take your game and it's the same anywhere you go, no matter the circumstances, no matter the stakes. And I thought Errol Spence, he just passed. His first test, he passed it with flying colors, and he even left the classroom early while all the other kids were just watching him leave.
So he next up, he wants Keith Thurman or Pacquiao. Pacquiao's not going to happen, obviously, for obvious reasons. He wants Keith Thurman. Thurman's out until probably the end of the year with the elbow injury. I'm a big Keith Thurman fan, but I don't think Keith Thurman is going to be rushing to get in the ring with Errol Spence. Just to be real. It's just such a physical and tough fight. And you look at Keith Thurman, who, physically he was, having problems kind of slowing down and stopping Danny Garcia, a guy who was really coming up for 140. How much harder it's going to be for him to fight Errol Spence?
Yeah, so now that you mentioned that, you mentioned those names, given what you've seen recently on the boxing scene, is Errol Spence Jr., is he the best welterweight?
I would say
in the world?
Yes.
Best welterweight.
You have to rank guys based on what they've done in the division, so he's gonna fall wherever the hell he falls. But if I was picking one welterweight right now against anybody, if I had there was a draft for the neck for one fight, I would take him. And I mean, if you asked me this prior to yesterday, I would have taken Keith Thurman. So, yeah, he'd get my vote. I would say he's the best welterweight. And I told you yesterday, I don't think anyone else.
So he's the best.
I don't think anyone else at welterweight can beat him right now, or will beat him. I think what we're gonna see is he's gonna have a bunch of mandatory defenses. He's gonna have a hard time getting guys in the ring with him, and yeah, it's just gonna be hard because he's a murderer. He doesn't really have a great he doesn't really have a personality that jumps off the screen, so he's not really that marketable. So then the money's really not gonna be there. So it's gonna be hard for him to get guys in the ring. So he's just gonna see. You're gonna see a bunch of probably a bunch of C and B level title defenses until he can finally get Keith Thurman in the ring. Because I mean, they're both Al Heyman. That'd be a big fight, but I'm sure they'll probably push that out to sometime next year. Which means in the meanwhile, we're gonna get a bunch of, I don't know, lopsided fights that no one wants to see.
Right. So. As far as Keith Thurman, he came out on Twitter and said there's no true king in the welterweight division until him and Errol Spence settle it. I don't think one time is ducking nobody. So I think Thurman will take that fight. I think even when Spence had called him out previously, maybe last year or the year before that, whenever Mayweather was urging everybody and had everybody calling Errol Spence the best back then, Thurman had mentioned, hey, fight some names, get a belt, become a champion, and then we can and then we can make this fight. So we're gonna have to hold Mr. Thurman true to his word, hopefully. And so far he's proven to do that, even though it takes him maybe a bit of time to get the fight going. So, and then with Pacquiao, like you said, I mean, you won't see Pacquiao. I mean, that's out of the question. The money isn't there, like you were talking about with Spence. And I mean, Arum wouldn't make that matchup until, I mean, he just wouldn't. I mean, if he can get his marquee guy in Terrence Crawford, the Pacquiao fight, then I mean, there's no chance in hell that he'll give that shot to Errol Spence. So yeah, you can.
Just to put a bow on this, just a positive bow, we can confirm two things, two rumors. Spence probably did really put it on Mayweather pretty bad before the Cotto fight. And
right.
Spence probably did knock out Adrian Broner sparring.
Damn, man. That's not very positive. What are you talking about?
For Spence, it is. I mean, all praises. And another thing I wanted to point out about Spence, Dallas, and not just Dallas, but everybody gave their love to Errol Spence. You know how the boxing fans come out of the woodwork. He made the Sports Today, Dallas Morning News.
I saw that.
Carl Frampton, Deion Sanders, Roman Gonzalez, the Dallas Mavericks, the basketball team.
Right.
Gervonta Davis, Badu Jack, Clarissa Shields, Damian Lillard, Peter Quillen. I mean, he came out of his cave to congratulate him. Lennox Lewis, Terrence Crawford, the Jamar Charlo, who he sparred. And
Jermell Charlo.
Robert Griffin III, who's on some football team. And Des Bryant didn't congratulate him. He simply tweeted out #ManDown.
Oh, yeah, and then you forgot one of the GOATs, LL Cool J, also gave him congratulations.
You know what? I didn't see
Twitter.
that. But yeah, that's pretty dope. So he deserves
it. I think the Thurman fight, it'll be there.
Yeah, it'll be there, but the problem is it'll be there next year. And I don't want to talk about shit that's not going to happen for a year. I'm tired of 2017 is the year I'm done waiting for bullshit.
But let me ask you this question. Now, you want to see him just in the big fights, or do you want to see him? I mean, would you like to see him on a CBS fight? You want him to just sit out and wait for his next fight?
Because just the same reason people got frustrated with Triple G, myself included, is because to some part of the boxing fans, it's fun to just watch people get destroyed. But I don't want to see lopsided fights where I know the other guy has no chance. He's going to be beat up and knocked out. I don't want to see that shit. That's a waste of time. Like I don't want to see that.
I think what you've seen though, in boxing over the years, that once you've proven yourself and pass that test, the fans will stick around through some of your, not as intriguing matchups. So
Yeah, I mean, but you asked me if I want to see
Right.
that.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't want
but-
to see that. No, not
Because
only do I agree with you.
I like Errol Spence. I like the way he operates, man. So I mean, I want to see him. I don't want to see him just wait for the Thurman fight.
I mean, it's
know?
it's going to happen. Like that scenario is going to happen because again, there's just no way. I mean, there's no way Thurman's going to fight him this year. It's going to be like hell to give him a fight. Maybe next year during the summer, but in the meanwhile, he's going to have to take some stay busy fights. But
because I mean, I think Sean Porter will take that fight.
yeah, but I don't think Sean Porter has the pop on his punches to really, Errol Spence. I'll put this: Errol Spence is the one guy who could slow Sean Porter down, just through accumulation.
You think so?
Yeah,
I don't
hits
know,
that
man.
hard.
I haven't seen that guy. I mean, I would probably have to favor Spence in that fight too, but I still think that.
Well, in this instance, I'll go by common opponent. Sean Porter fought Kell Brook, and Errol Spence fought Kell Brook. And look at the difference.
Yeah, I mean, you could, but triangle theories, man. Come on.